You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to an Achtung Extra. Yes, yesterday's defeat up there at Blackpool has affected me, and I needed to talk out the issues. And there's only one man that I turn to when I need to talk out my issues, and that's Mr. Ryan Loftus. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Cheers, Nick, and thanks for booking me on short notice. It'll be my usual rate for this one, I think, and hopefully we can work through some stuff. And when it starts getting a personal level, we'll stop the recording and just keep going.
He has a usual rate, listeners. Arc at him. I thought we'd just open up the show first with a really great report that Phil Clarke sent to me. Too late to get into yesterday's show, so I thought part of the reason why I thought I'd do today's post-mortem was to include Phil's report. So we're just going to run that now.
Hi Nick, this is Phil Clarke giving you a quick call on the way back from the wastelands of Blackpool. Very grim and dire performance today. Thought the formation was interesting. We went with a very defensive three in the midfield, which was a little bit worrying for me. I felt that perhaps now that we are clearly not going up and almost certainly not going down, we could take a few more risks. And there were plenty of experienced players there, so perhaps it was a day we could have maybe put Berry in from the start, possibly. I did feel with the three centre midfielders in there that none of them really seemed to want the ball. They were all kind of hiding behind players. When the centre-backs were looking for a pass, they weren't available. When on odd occasion it did go to them, they just literally passed it straight back to the centre-back. Not one of them was brave enough to want to take the ball on the turn, try and drive us forward 10 or 15 yards, which is really frustrating and certainly led to a game of long ball attritional football from both teams, really. Wondering about Malone, really ineffective at the moment. Can't work out if that's the formation tweaks that we've had or whether it's his form. Afobe today didn't really look like he was kind of putting a full shift in, not sure what's wrong there. Mason Bennett, it's an enigma how we've got a professional footballer who just cannot play more than 60 minutes. You know, is that he's not being given the chance, or is it just physically they don't trust that he can? Again, back to an earlier point, Mahoney, why? You know, he's been out of favour since, I don't think he's been in the squad since October, November. And then he's in today when actually we've got other options now. You know, you could have played Berry, you could have, played Burke, which obviously we did. You could have put Lovelace on. You know, there's options. You know, Mahomes clearly not in favour in any capacity. So why suddenly now has he come back into the fold a bit like Ben did last week, out of nowhere, and then not noticed again? Similar with Lovelace and Boateng. 1 week they're in, 1 week they're out. Very peculiar, very inconsistent decisions for me. I think there's plenty of fingers that can be pointed at the management and coaching, but hard to look past the players also today. You know, really similar to Peterborough in terms of very flat, no energy. There was just no urgency when we went a goal down to get moves going, get the ball forward. Restarts took forever. There's just no passion and energy from the players, which is really worrying. And I think the manager looks flat, the players look flat, the real staleness. I'm just thinking, how can Gary Rowett re-spark this? Has he started to lose the group? I just don't know the answer to that question. Anyway, on to next week, and hopefully he will find some answers.
AchtungMilwallachtungmillwall.
A big thank you to Phil there, Ryan. Yesterday's performance feels like, we keep saying turning points. You can't keep saying you have a turning point in the season, but it does feel particularly painful to me yesterday. Did you get a sight of the stream yesterday, Ryan? Did you have a look at it?
Yeah, I couldn't watch live. I caught up with it in the evening and kind of watched the majority of the game back. And it's exactly that, like you say, about the turning points. We seem to have had, probably this season, probably 6 or 7 turning points.
We do.
Sometimes game,
yeah.
Either for better or worse. But I don't know, something about yesterday has really, well, I say something about yesterday. We know what it is about yesterday's the performance, but something about yesterday has really seemed to damage the fan base. Maybe it's a bit strong, but damage maybe Gary Rowett's standing within the fan base, and it feels like a watershed sort of moment. It feels like this season's almost over. You don't want to be melodramatic about anything, but before this game and even before last week, there's the hint that we had a long break because of COVID. Everyone was out, and you get the anticipation. And you think, well, if we get a few wins, we've got these runs coming up. We're still in a shout of the playoffs. Now, we're still not miles off, but performance level and the same thing we're having, I think, time and time again this season. You just feel like, as a team, we're a million miles off. It might only be 6 or 7 or 8 points, but it feels like a million miles at the moment.
It's more than that now, Ron. It's just looking at the table. I mean, if we're going to talk about sixth spot, it's 11 points. Albeit Huddersfield have played 2 games more than we have, but we've got a lot of clubs between us and Huddersfield in 6th spot. And yeah, you can talk about 11, but it's just so hard to see where the wins and the goals are going to come from at the moment. Now, we could be being premature. It may all turn a corner. But I mean, I've just highlighted 2 quotes from, I think this is the Sunday Mirror today. First one's a quote from the Blackpool coach yesterday, Neil Critchley. He says, "We scored when we were on top." Yes, they did. And apart from the one save, we saw the game through relatively comfortably. And that I read that this morning, and I thought, actually, that's spot on, because it was relatively comfortable for Blackpool. They weren't really ever, until late when Tyler came in, Tyler Bury, and to some extent, I think Ollie Burke with his pace. So you're talking about maybe the last 15 minutes where maybe they felt a little bit less comfortable. But those words, we were relatively comfortable, really, really hurts, because it shouldn't be that Millwall team travelling, it's a long way and blah, 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 Blackpool in January. But you should still be able to take the game to them. And we're just not doing that, Ryan, are we?
No, definitely. And I remember Neil Critchley, when he was at the Den, obviously we came back from behind against Blackpool. That was probably one of the maybe positive turning points, when he kind of changed the system around at half time and we went a bit more attacking and managed to break down a 10-man Blackpool. And Critchley said, like almost all managers say when they come to the Den, that what you're going to get against Millwall. It's going to be a physical game. It's not going to be comfortable. And they're coming out against a Blackpool side who, they're not a great side. Like, they're doing really well this season for having just come up. They're from a rebuild of having a new ownership, for being in the Premier League. They've gone all the way down the divisions and are starting to work their way back up. They're not, one of the better sides in the division. We beat them at home, and they're the sort of game, when you look at the calendar, look at the fixture list, you think, well, that is a good opportunity to get a waypoint of 3 points away from home. And it's sort of one as well. Even if you get 1 point and the performance is all right, you kind of go, well, it's away from home. You take the point and you move on. But time and time again now, we get in these away games where, different styles of calamity as it is. It's either us throwing it away or us just not turning up. I mean, you compare this one to the Bristol City game, 3-2, just a few weeks before, and it's a different sort of loss. But you come out with the same feeling of just, how have we lost that to that rubbish, from a Mill perspective? And we just didn't test. Bart made a couple stops to actually keep us in it. That one with his legs in the first half is excellent, but it's a poor goal to give away. How their striker gets 2 touches in the box to control it and finish it when there's 5 Millwall bodies in there after Bart's again made another save. And we just didn't test them. Murray Wallace, came closest with that one from the set piece, I guess. And Tyler Bury comes on. But I mean, it was from before kickoff, and there's been plenty of times this season with Gary Rowett, I guess. You see the lineup and you go, oh, bloody hell.
Yeah.
At 8-2, I think I saw it be described as the lineup. Scott Malone seems to have gone off the boil a bit. Normally you'd expect him, you go, okay, we've got the back 5, but with Malone on and you think with McNamara, they can also almost be auxiliary attackers. Like, you look at how Liverpool use their wing backs, and obviously none of them are as good as those, but they push really high up and they offer something in attack. They just don't seem to be doing that. So you've got a midfield of 3 defensive midfielders. Yeah. And I know that they're making, sticking plasters a bit injury-wise, but Tyler Bury comes on, and I think, did Rowett himself say it, or was it just in one of the match reports maybe saying Tyler was man of the match for being on the pitch for 50 minutes?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, start him. And if you need to take him off, look, tell you what, you've got Ollie Burke who's just signed. You can put him on when he starts to flag, but he's not going to get fit and he's not going to get better if he doesn't play him. And I think every time Tyler Bury's played, even last season, the season before that, he's looked bright. He's looked good. Against Palace, he looked really good when he came on.
He did.
Just give him a go. Give him a go. Why? What have you got to lose?
I generally thought, I mean, there's this dread moment on a Saturday, Ryan, isn't it? When about 2:00 when they publish the team sheet, and that's like, until that moment, you've normally just parked in your car. Or yesterday, I was just kind of checking Twitter, and then there's a dread moment when you see the starting 11, because it was a very defensively minded starting 11. I mean, to some extent, we're always going to be. You've got to be realistic. You are going along, long northern trip away, so you're not going to go there particularly to throw caution to the wind. But I thought we'd see possibly Ollie Burke. He's an experienced championship player. I thought he may have started. Maybe you're going to give him 60 minutes. I don't know. Maybe Tyler to come in at that point, or reverse it if you like. I don't mind. Give Tyler half.
It seems bizarre to have them both on the bench. You might as well give them 45. I mean, you turn up with that team that we've got, and even on paper, who's creating anything? Who's actually offering any attacking threat? Obviously, Bennick's done well recently, and Mason Bennick a handful. But from the midfield perspective, you've got 3 carbon copies of each other to an extent.
Yeah, I suppose you're looking for flair from Scott Malone. You're looking for it. And to some level, Danny Mack gets forward well. I don't know if I could call him a flair player. He's a good player, but he's not what I would call a flair player. And then you're looking at Keith Bell, Evans, and Mitchell in midfield. And as you say, I mean, one of those, 2 of those, and then someone that can at least get forwards a little. And that's where you're looking at the bench there, Ryan. I mean, it's the bench doesn't seem to relate to the starting 11 in some ways, because you've got Ben Thompson, who's been cast out in the wilderness for a long time. Connor Mahoney appeared yesterday. Again, great. I like him, and as we said before, many will criticise his consistency and all that. We're not going to have that debate again, but he is who he is. But one of those flair players, Bury, Mahoney, and then you got Zach Lovelace. I mean, are we really down to the 15-year-old being a regular in the first team? I don't know. I know we're dealing with an injury crisis at the moment, but it does seem to have. It does seem to have struck particularly deep, if that's as good as we're going to get in terms of a bench. And Ben Thompson, who didn't show, and Hayden Muller, who's just been recalled. So strange choices. The online debate is pretty open, pretty naked today, really, Ryan, about Gary Rowett's future. I mean, that's his 3rd loss. He said himself in that Daily Mirror report that he's not lost 3 in a row. I presume he means with Millwall, and it hurts, he says. He's starting to look to me, and I don't like to say this because, like I said on yesterday's show, not the purpose of this podcast is not to knock Mill, it's to promote it, really, if we can. But Gary Rowett's starting to look like the man that has that kind of haunted, gaunt look of the manager that's running out of road.
I think.
How do you see?
I think we're getting to the point where, for a long time, I think with bad performances on Rowett, there's always been the extenuating circumstances. Like even now, the overriding excuse really is that Millwall are fighting above their weight. Really, we don't have the budget that some of the teams in the Championship do to sign really good players for millions of pounds and develop that way. So that's the overarching debate. But that is Millwall, like that, and you can use that. And you can, when we lose 4-0 to Fulham, or when they beat us 2-1 earlier in the season, you go, look, their team cost over £200 million, and ours was put together. And that is a valid point to make. Also, the COVID finances have probably made that a bit worse. Then we've had a load of injuries over the last 2-3 seasons. I remember speaking with people on Twitter, there must be something more going on, because the amount of injuries we get is just uncanny. Do we just have an injury-prone squad? Is it the fitness department? Is it the fact that we normally have a small squad, so everyone's playing a bit too much? And then now you've got the COVID on top of that. You get to the point, though, where 3 losses in a row, and this isn't the first bad run in the season, where you go, well, those excuses aren't good enough anymore. And I know you do have them, and it's a shame that you have the problems, but it's not good enough because the first team it's not bad players, but you like say you've got 3 attackers on the bench there. Play 4 at the back. Drop one of the centre backs. Your squad's that thin. Drop one of the centre backs, play 4 at the back, and give it a go. They're going to play. They play 4-4-2. They have played it every single week all season.
Yeah.
Play 4 at the back. Get an attacker on, and if it's not working, you can change back to your regular shape. And there was a couple games where he has changed the system, and that Birmingham game was fantastic. He changed the system, played a back 4, and everyone was like, "Hang on, he seems to have sussed it here."
Yeah, it seems to be finding it.
Yeah, we had it against Blackpool at home, against Stoke at home, coming back from behind, and you look at it and go, "We might be on something here. Actually, I think we're getting somewhere." Same with the Birmingham result, and then 2 weeks later, it's like every single week is completely independent of the last one. Watching Millwall sometimes, whatever has gone on the week before or the game before has no bearing on what you're going to see next week.
No, and that bothers me. That worries me because some of the random, and I don't think it's going too far to call them random substitutions where you go a goal behind, and that was pretty grimly predictable with that starting 11. We may have nicked a goal. I think there was a chance in the first half, Ryan. I think Murray put a ball wide, and those are yes, you will get those opportunities by lobbing the ball into the box by one method or another. It will fall down at some point and you may get a goal, you may not. We didn't get a goal yesterday, but at some point Blackpool had chances. They had quite a few chances across the first and then the second half before they scored. And then you're chasing the game, and that's when we start to bring on the flair players. So we bring in Burke, the new boy, and Tyler, and it is so predictable. I think that's the thing that's really starting to nag at a lot of people. It's that you could have written that script before the game kicked off. Once you saw that starting 11, I think most Millwall fans, I think I read on Twitter that there were people talking about going before the game kicked off, going back to the pub, the casino, wherever that's. And so this one stuck to me. What JJ says on Twitter, he's never seen a Millwall away from 942 went up there. Listen,
yeah, load went up. A lot went up. Like, really commendable. We're on a losing run as well.
And he says they've never been so flat. He's never seen a Millwall wave travelling support as flat as yesterday. Maybe I don't know, exaggeration. I don't know, but it would have been flat. Let's just accept it was a flat away following. 900 blokes in Blackpool on the jolly.
Well, it's not even the Millwall way. You know what you're going to get a lot of the time. The 1-0s that we were winning under Rowett, where you are sitting off and you don't have a load to shout about, but you're getting off the fact and you're enjoying the fact that you're really frustrating and pissing off the home fans and the home players. And then when we nick it, it's that whole build up. The 1-0 against Coventry was a perfect example. We're under the cosh. Preston last season, we're under the cosh. Odds against us, really. And the other team are pushing and pushing and pushing. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the second half, we get the goal. And you're just laughing. You're just laughing at it, being like, we look shit, but we are just completely managing and containing you.
We've edged it. Yeah.
So then we go to Blackpool, and okay, they sit off us a bit more. If a team sits off us, we have no chance, because who are you going to get to create anything or to just ask a question? Like, it's just impossible. We don't have anyone in the squad. And that's another thing now where I think Rowett is going to start to come under criticism. I think has done, but he's been at the club long enough now and had enough transfer windows. His signings seem to not be good enough at the moment. It's very stopgap. We are lacking a creative player and have done. So, I mean, since before Rowett, but he's now had, 4 or 5 transfer windows? This is his 4th or 5th. Or this will be his, I guess, 4th.
Yeah.
I know the club have tried to address it. They have bids for players. Obviously, like the Louis Sibley one that's going in, and looks like we just can't afford him, really. Josh Windass in the summer, same occasion. We just can't afford him. But surely it's better to have someone or take a chance on someone who is affordable than just have no one whatsoever. Like,
well, it's that, because I've written down the R word, and I call it the recruitment, because you're right. And I think most realistic Mill supporters will know that we're not going to bring resources to the table that's going to be able to play at the top table signings wise, which takes you then to finding talent from below, lower level strikers, lower level players that are hungry. We've seen one thing that really struck anyone that didn't see the live stream yesterday of the game, I was really struck, as we saw against Palace. Tyler Bury came in, was prepared to back his own skill, take men on, make runs into dangerous areas, and looked hungry for it, Ryan. And that hunger is not apparent in some other players in that team. Keefton Bell don't look hungry, and George Evans don't look hungry to me in midfield.
Keefton Bell is all. I think Keefton Bell's been. I mean, he's not been an awful signing in terms of how he's been on the pitch compared to some of Millwall's worst things, but I think he's been an awful signing. We paid money for him over the age of 30, and now, at the beginning of the season, he was playing every single game, and then after 5 games, he just couldn't get in the squad. And this is, I understand Rowett brought him in because he managed him at Blackpool, Birmingham, and
Birmingham. I think he came from, didn't he? Yeah,
Birmingham. But he knows him, he trusts him. But we didn't need we didn't need another defensive midfielder to then a few weeks later bring in George Evans as well. And it's Millwall used to, we used to gamble on a player, and Tyler Bury is a great example of it. He is a player who we've effectively gambled on. We signed him off AFC Wimbledon when he was 17, 18. And he has shown in flashes that he looks like he could do something. Oh, no, he didn't. It's a shame that he got his injury at Hartlepool because it looks like he was set to have an amazing 6 months. Yeah. He scored 4 goals in his first 5 games there. They were playing. It's one of those, you can always tell when a player's out of position at a lower level. It's because they're better than everyone. And he was playing as a striker at Hartlepool. We wouldn't think to play him as a striker in the Championship because he's not a striker. But he's so clearly, that where he went there, he's so clearly so much better than everyone at that level that they can just play him as a striker and he'll do the job. But, he's a classic. Mill will take a chance on him, put him in the team and see what he does. But instead, we've gone to, I tell you what, we'll sign a steady Eddie. We'll sign your Evans, we'll sign your Keefton Bell, we'll sign this guy. He's coming to his late 20s, approaching his 30s, but he'll fill a gap for us and he'll do a job. Steve Morrison, Lee Gregory, players who, even Jed Wallace to an extent, is, we got him on loan, but he was a relative gamble because
we rolled the dice with all of those players.
They're all players who, and now we're not doing that and we're still wasting the money. Bodvarsson was a Championship striker and we've just cancelled his contract after paying £750,000 for him and getting about a goal and a half in 5 years. Well, it's not good enough. That's not like, you would rather, I tell you what, rather pay 50 grand for someone from League 2 or non-league, give them a go at the age of 22. Obviously the players need to be out there to do that. But at the end of the day, wouldn't you rather have had someone who was a real risk and you've got a chance on selling them on for a bit more than some approaching 30-year-old striker who by the end of it, when we had 13 players available, couldn't even get in the squad. And now we're paying off his contract. That is a massive problem. The fact that Mill have cancelled 2 contracts this window is a massive problem.
Achtung, Millwall.
I suppose both were acceptances of reality. But Budvarsson, I don't know. I'm kind of. We spoke about it the other day about Budvarsson, and he's gone now, so that's that. I think there's the recruitment generally. We've said it many times. Recruitment at Mill seems to be a real problem, and I don't know why. Because some other clubs, I suppose Luton leap into my mind, but they seem to get players and look good on it. I mean, I'm just looking at the table here, so I'm not advocating Lutoners. I mean, just 1 place above us, 2 points in front of us, 1 game less. So they're doing okay. But then there's this kind of idea that we're a small club, but Luton are small. But we seem to struggle on that, and I don't know why. I think Aaron's touched on this when we've spoken. You and me might have spoken about it, but there doesn't seem to be a great playing-wise, a great plan for the future. We don't seem to have any playing identity. We seem to be chasing a lot, chasing a style, chasing games. Very
reactionary.
Yeah. I would have thought that would be one of the things that Gary Rowett would want to, a playing style that runs through the club, where you got a bench. I mean, I get that we have injuries, but that bench didn't seem to relate to the starting 11. I don't get what we're trying to achieve with the current approach to games.
Yeah, I think that is, defensive solidity is obviously part of it, but really, how long has it been since we've been a really defensively solid side? Like we're defensively solid in some games, but not across the board. When Rowett first came in, you couldn't argue with it. We were really solid. We didn't concede many goals last season as well. Similarly, last season, our problem was scoring goals. You know, we kept the most clean sheets in the league. Bart had the most clean sheets in the country. Like, we were defensively solid, and our problem was we couldn't create or score goals.
Couldn't score a goal for Tuffy. Yeah.
The names we said before. So in the summer, what do we do then? You know, we bring in, Saville maybe is brought in to add some goals from midfield. You can make sense of it. Phobie on loan again. Ballard, stocking up the defence. But there are still very obvious gaps. And also, with the looming Jed Wallace situation that they knew would happen in the summer, you know, they were aware of that. Really, as a football club, when you're recruiting and building a squad, you've got to be looking 1 year, 18 months down the line. Who's here now? But more importantly, who's not going to be here next season? You know, we went that season. If Bradshaw hadn't scored 8 goals, he'd be released. We could be selling him this summer. We could be selling him this window. If he hadn't,
we'd probably be letting him go like we did John Daddy. You know, it'd be thank you, get shot of him. You know,
exactly, and that's another bit wasted. We've got Mahoney, and he got his injury, but he wasn't injured before that, and he wasn't playing. He's running out of his contract. There's so many gaps, and no one has been. Maybe at Millwall, I guess the case is a bit more. These players do have to have left before we can bring new ones in, but it's very slow to react. It seems like the clubs are maybe a bit too slow to react in terms of the signings we've made of late. Seem to be because we've got a bit of injuries. We've got like 6 central midfielders on the book, 6 or 7 central midfielders. Yeah. Largely because last season we had a load of injuries in central midfield, so we went out on a shopping spree, and now we've got a load of them, and they're all pretty much the exact same player. You've got Saville, who's a bit of a box to box. You've got Mitchell, who's a bit of a box to box. Evans, who kind of just sits and does the tackling. You've got Kieftenbeld, who sits and does the tackling. You've got Leonard, who could be box to box or sit and do the tackling. I mean, there's no variation there. There's no creativity. There's no someone different who will offer a bit of dynamism or give you a bit of something else. And I think Mitchell has tried to do that. He's tried to maybe in some games exert himself too much and try and be that game changer because he cares. And you just get to the point where you're like, what? It seems to get to this point of the season in the last couple of years, and you're looking in how are we going to line up next season? Is a massive question for me. Who's going to be? Or
you could ask which division we're going to line up in, because although we're not, we are some way beyond relegation. The bottom 3 listeners, they're Peterborough third from bottom with 19 points, and we are in 33, so that's a 14-point gap. But we are consistently losing games at the moment, Ryan. Yeah. And as you just said, I mean, it reminds me of those people that went out and bought 5 trolley loads of toilet roll when COVID first began. We've got a load of midfielders. Exactly. We've gone to the defensive midfielder shop of the average, the value brand ones, the average level, and we come out with a couple of shopping trolleys worth of midfielders.
Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't be too worried about the relegation. I think there are worse teams in the division than us, and I think Harry is probably Harry's catchphrase about Rowett is that you won't go down with him. And I think
not this season, because I think you're right. I think there's enough between us and the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah. The future wise, this is the question for the future as well. Gary Rowett obviously is brought into the club to make us a viable playoff contender. Obviously, the Championship's such a weird league like that every year, especially for a club like Millwall, realistically that gets harder and harder because more teams will have gone up and come down. Norwich, when they probably come down next year, Watford when they come down next year, they're going to be richer than they were before. Luckily there seems to be fewer teams who will go up for one season, like your Huddersfields, who go up for 1 year and have a bit of a cash injection like QPR were doing. It now seems to be two of the 3 teams already been up, and you can see that with Fulham at the top of the table. Top 2 is going to be a stretch, but 5th and 6th realistically in the division are always up for grabs. I mean, really, 4th, 5th, and 6th are always up for grabs. Swansea last year and Barnsley, no one before the season was really tipping them to be in it, but they got there, and that's where Millwall need to get. They need to get to a place where they can realistically challenge. I mean, in terms of how it can swing, look at Barnsley. They're bottom of the league and are going to go down bottom
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
league.
yeah,
They're
absolutely. Yeah.
bottom of a league in which one of the teams started on -21. That's how bad they are. Like, they are awful. And they finished 6th last year. That's the league that we're in. So there is something to be said for consistency and having that dependability. But Rowett's job was to make us a viable playoff candidate. Every year, his mantra has been, well, I've guided us to 2 top 10 finishes.
Yep.
If we finish outside, and which isn't quite true because we did finish 11th, I think, in one of the years, but
Yeah, 11th or 12th. Yeah.
But so if we finish, how low do we have to finish for the board maybe to turn around? I'm not saying, I don't really like yourself. I don't really like baying for managers' blood really until it's a real dire situation. But how low do Millwall have to finish for a board to turn around and go, do you know what? That's not good enough, and we have to let you go. Is 14? If Millwall finished 14th after finishing 10th and 11th the last couple of years, is that a big enough drop to say that's not good enough, or do you go, well, a couple of results here and there? Where's the line?
We're straying into the bottom half of the table now. I mean, historically, a top half of the table finish, whether it's 12th, 11th, 10th, whatever, has been very, very good, and historically for Millwall. Although I don't think we shouldn't be chained to the past. And I think, funny enough, Neil Pfister made a good point, talking about the kind of the small club syndrome that you can fall into, that you don't have any ambition, then you're kind of grateful for the crumbs that fall your way. And he's got a small wall. That was the word. The Charlton insult, wasn't it? Small wall thinking. I think there's a lot in that, because it means you can never aim to be more than what you are, and I don't subscribe to that. And there's another debate here. A chap here called Connor asks, who would we get? And he says it's a strange argument as to who would we get, which seems embedded into all football supporters when they want the manager gone. There are always candidates. There's always someone. I mean, other clubs, Ryan, and we've never done this, and I don't understand why we don't do it, but they seem to find, I'm thinking of Brentford and Thomas Frank. I'd never heard of him. I mean, I don't follow European football. I hadn't heard of him. Other clubs with varying degrees of success have gone abroad and come back with coaches that really do look to change a style completely. We don't do that, do we? We for better or for worse, we're forever wedded with this kind of working class club that gets up and under at it, and I'm prone to it. I've followed the club for donkey's years now, so I get it. But other clubs do aspire to be more than that, and they succeed at it to some level. Brentford being a great example, but
there's a few. Managerial. It seems like maybe the club seems to have quite a limited contact book to an extent. In terms of the last.
That's one way to put it.
In terms of the last 3 appointments, Harris is a given, and Harris great manager in this time he was there. But Holloway, just because they probably saw him on TV the day before and were like, oh yeah, he's out of a job. And almost similarly with Gary Rowett. I mean, Gary Rowett seemed like a good fit. And, to an extent, he's not been the worst fit in the world, but it seems to be swaying against him now. But you look at some teams, and there was the Ipswich point in Kieran McKenna a lot of teams seem to be appointing people's under 23 coach, or they've had a look like Steve Cooper, like Graham Potter obviously coming in, Steve Cooper at Swansea now, going from England under 17s coach. So there seems to be a bit of a wider thought of, we don't just need a name who's a manager. We need someone who can coach the players and develop players. And I think Millwall maybe behind the scenes, I can't comment for certainty, but is maybe a bit old-fashioned sense of the manager of, the guy who comes in and runs this. And, a lot of clubs now have the director of football model where they have someone who is looking after that holistic view of what the club should be and how we develop. And they find managers who will suit that. And when that manager goes, they can find another one who will suit that. Whereas Millwall seem very much to be at the behest of the manager they have at the time.
Yeah.
And the biggest example of that is looking at the signings. I know Neil Harris resigned, but Neil Harris signing 8 players in the summer and resigning 3 months later and going. And then similarly with Rowett now, he seems to have, I don't know how it works behind the scenes of the club, but Rowett does very much seem to have final say in the signings.
I agree.
Sometimes you get a manager kind of half unhappy with a signing, or maybe going, no, maybe not exactly what I wanted. All these signings seem like, and the fact that they play as much as they do, like Rowett signing. So he's obviously given the trust of the club. And that can be a problem when you end up with someone like Holloway who runs the club almost into the ground doing it. So maybe Millwall need to broaden their horizons in future, or maybe there needs to be a root and branch review, maybe of Millwall, how they
re-education.
Yeah, like say, like Luton is a good example because they are a small team. They don't have a lot of money, but they have a very clear idea of what they want to do, who they want to bring in, and they sell players on, and they get a bit of money, and so every year they do that, they get a bit better because they have a bit more money. They're not just signing young players as well. I think they brought in Henry Lansbury on a free at this season. He was someone that Millwall could definitely have been into, but it's appealing for players as well because he's looked at that, and he was at Villa playing in the Premier League. Really good at Forest when he was in Championship. He's a very, very good Championship midfielder and obviously getting to the end of his career. But he's seen a project at Luton, spoken to the manager and gone, do you know what? I like the sound of that. I really like the idea that the manager has. I mean, a lot of players used to say it about Neil Harris when they signed for Millwall when we were in League One or coming up from the Championship, about how convincing the project he sold was and there was a clear idea of what we wanted to do. And I think we just ran out of steam under Harris. But at the moment, I wonder what Rowett is saying to players in a recruitment meeting when they're meeting their agents. This is how we want to play. This is what we want to do. I wonder what that conversation is. Or is it just, are you free? Do you want to fancy a few more games than you're getting right now? Ollie Burke could be good. The jury's out in terms of his career. Like you said, he's gone for a lot of money at a lot of places, and he's had this potential apparently in his whole life. But I don't think he's really ever been a success at any club he's been at. Not to say he won't be a success at Millwall, but I think on the bit about him sign, I don't know if it was the club statement or whatever, it was about one of the largest themes was he's somewhere where he can get more game time than he is at Sheffield United.
Yeah.
Do we want to be the more game time club? Like, it's not a great recruitment policy.
He certainly looked quick yesterday. I mean, I will say that anyone that watched it would say he's fast. I still think that Tyler Bury looked the more effective of the two because they both came on. I think they came on together, didn't they? Yeah. And if you're going to say to me which one caught my eye, I would have said Tyler looked like the player that's played at the higher level because Burke has played for RB Leipzig, and they paid big for him to get him out there. So, I don't want to be unfair on the boy because he's only just joined us. But
if he doesn't work out, Nick, if he is no good, he can double up and he can work the door on Harry's bar. I mean, the size of the arms on him, he's
I thought you could use him for running on to get the flares when the away end throw a flare on because he's very fast to be out there like a shot. It's a big 7 days. I don't know when the transfer window actually finishes. I think it might be slightly more than 7 days because it's the 23rd as we record. So I presume they've got till the 31st before it closes. So a big closing period of the transfer window. I mean, we clearly need to, and Rowett has actually said we need to freshen up, as the expression is. We need something, Ryan. I think the flatness was the overwhelmingly depressing part of yesterday's performance. And I think someone made the point online, and forgive me, whoever said it, because I like to quote, but Rowett looks flat and sounds flat, and that's never good. That is when the clock in the call on hanging on the wall starts to tick a little bit louder for me because you can't keep losing games like we are.
Especially this early in the season. I know it's just after halfway, but it's January. You can't feel like you're going through the motions. And I think this run of losses, and whether or not you want to include the Palace game in that 3 or 4, however you want to look at it, it has seemed to take all the momentum out that we potentially could have gone into the new year with. It seems to have killed any top 6 hopes dead. The Championship is unpredictable, and who knows? Maybe we go on a run from February through March and have a really good. But we've got tough games coming up. We're playing the majority of the top of the league,
we do.
By mid-February, our season could well be over, and then if it just drags out and drags out and drags out with not really any ambition and not really any what becomes of the atmosphere and what becomes of the situation of some of the players who are underperforming and what becomes of just what does maybe February to May hold for Rowett, for the atmosphere, for the fan base? Are we going to be finishing? Is the last game of the season going to have 9,000 people there?
We're up against West Brom on Saturday. West Brom at home on Saturday. Gary Rowett, I mean, I won't say he needs a result because we're not desperate, but what he needs is a Millwall performance, one that sends people home.
More than a result, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the performance more than the result.
The kind of performance where you can walk down Zampa Road onto Ilderton after the game, and there's a bit of hubbub. It's quite hard to see it at the moment. I will say that much, listeners. But if you then, my eye, Ryan, can't look much further than that Fulham game on Tuesday, the 8th of February, because they've been they've been on fire. I mean, they're a good team, and they've got resources, so I won't keep bashing away at that. But they've been scoring goals like it's going out of fashion. And if we get a spanking there, I think it could
be their third 7-0 of the season. They'll be licking their lips going into one,
I mean, if it goes into those realms, I mean, let's not prejudge, and we want to see a Millwall result there. But it's just very hard to see past that at the moment, because that will take us to roughly mid-Feb, and who knows what the situation may be by then. We desperately need that team, and I don't know if the team listen to us. I can't believe they don't. I think I would do if I was in it. But we need a performance. We need. I don't think we need results. Yes, because we need to arrest the losses, Ryan. But I think it's more about what you're seeing, because we saw nothing yesterday, did we?
That's the thing. It is performance, and it is the results with better performances. Obviously, the results come. But if Millwall get a decent draw. It's a bit like, actually, it's a bit why the Palace game people aren't really, personally for us, what I've seen anyway, people didn't seem too pissed off that we lost. Because we played well enough to win that game, and okay, we didn't win it. But there wasn't a load of, if we'd have lost 3 or 4-0, so it was a good performance. We didn't we let ourselves down in terms of not getting a result, but we didn't do ourselves a disservice. Really, the reason we didn't win that game is because we couldn't score, and that's our problem in the Championship anyway. So it wasn't a terrible performance. It was just one of those, and you kind of come away from it going, "Oh, what a shame! We're so close." And you go, "That goal could have been offside. They could have had a card." And it's not too bad. I mean, we've got 2 double headers at home, either side of the Fulham game. So we've got West Brom and Preston at home back to back, and then the Fulham game, and then we've got Cardiff and QPR at home. Those are 4 massive games for keeping the crowd on side. If Millwall can put on 2 strong home performances, and say you get 4 points from the West Brom and Preston game, get a draw and a win, but they're really hard Millwall performances, battling on the front
foot. Millwall, yeah.
That will turn the tide, I think, of opinion. Maybe not completely, but it will do a lot. And then tell you what, if you've got those 4 home games, if you've got a 7-0 loss to Fulham in the middle of them, but we get 9 points of 12, you probably come out of February and go, that's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not. We really need to start seeing proper performances consistently. I think we've seen it for 45s or for the odd game, but like I said earlier, each game seems to just it exists in its own little pocket at the moment. Then there's no consistency or coherence between each performance.
Well done, Ryan. Thank you for coming on the show, mate. Really appreciate it. And thank you too for listening, dear listeners. This was a little extra show. I had a good message there from Phil, and I wanted to get Ryan's take on the situation. So a big thank you to everyone. Thank you for listening. And we'll be back after the West Brom game. Let's hope for a decent performance. Till then, dear listeners, arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to AchtungMilwall. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a cheeky little review. Arrivederci Millwall. Till next time.
Who do you want to watch?